we must eradicate climate change. We must stop this, and we must hold Britain, uniquely Britain, to account, says St. Greta, because this was the home of the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution was absolutely an evil thing. Now, this is insanity. This is absolute insanity, because the people who were forefront of pushing forward the Industrial Revolution, as far as they were concerned, they were trying to break the stranglehold of the agricultural feudal economy. It was a movement forward. It was a movement of progress and of optimism and of light and of growth. And they weren't sitting there going, we've got this steam engine now, let's screw the entire planet up and make loads of money for ourselves. That wasn't what they were doing. And anybody that thinks that that's what they were doing desperately needs to go and read some history, because that's not what was happening at all.
Hello, everyone, and with us again, we have Richard Abbott. Welcome, Richard.
Hello, David. Nice to see you.
And yourself, yes. And today we're going to be talking about personal sovereignty, which you wrote a book about recently. Among other things in that book, I believe you laid out a map for how people can achieve it. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. Okay. It all begins with the recognition of individual uniqueness. This is crucial. We're not just blades of grass or grains of sand. We can't have that mindset if we want to establish personal sovereignty. You can't think that you're a grain of sand or a blade of grass and a kind of nothing in the universal scheme. Can't think that. We're unique. Every individual is unique. Therefore, everybody can do something. Well, each person can do something that no one else can. This is crucial. Now, the question that follows is, well, what is that? What? Yeah, okay. But that's the next step. The first step is, well, you have to accept that there is something. There is something that you can do that I cannot do. And there's something that I can do that you cannot do. And in fact, if we want to bring it right up to date, there's something that you can do that AI can't do. There's something that I can do that robots cannot do.
Yeah.
And if we can ferret that out, then we can establish personal sovereignty and we can free ourselves of Caesar.
Okay, excellent. Well, just before we move on then into that map, because the image that was conjured up in my mind when you're saying there are things that we can do that machines can't do. I've got the men racing the machines on the railways in America, trying to get the pins into the ground quicker than the pneumatic drill device could. That's an image that keeps coming up in my mind. Man against machine. The machine always wins out because the humanity is too frail, is the story that's being told. So help the viewers understand then how they are superior to machines.
What did Elon Musk say about this? He's not always reliable, but what did he say? Anything that we know how to do, anything that humans know how to do, and we know what we're doing when we do it, that can be replicated by a machine and can probably be done better and quicker.
Right.
So, for example, chess. Right? We know what the rules of chess are. We know how to play chess. Some of us are better than others, but we know what's required in order to play chess. Therefore, you can program all the multi-million possibilities into a machine, into a computer, and it will do better than any human. Anything that we can systemize and know how we do it, machine will ultimately do it better and quicker. That leaves us with the realm of things that we do, but we don't really know how we do them, because those aren't going to be produced better by machines. Those aren't going to be done quicker by machines because we can't program that. And some bright spark will say, what about machine learning? But machine learning is still based on the inputs that you give it.
Okay. The extent of our learning so far will determine how much it can learn.
Yes, but if we don't know
sphere, within what modality it can learn, perhaps, is that what you're saying? But we're creating new modalities as humans.
Well, we're not creating new modalities. We're already practicing new modalities. There's all sorts of things which we as humans do, if we are fully alive. There's all sorts of things which we do, which we don't really know what they are. We don't really know what they're all about.
Mhm.
The obvious example, although there are many, the obvious example is falling in love. I mean, people try to explain this in terms of biochemical neurological responses, but it doesn't capture it. That doesn't capture what is actually going on and what each person actually experiences when they fall in love.
Mhm.
So that isn't going to be systemized and programmatized anytime soon, because we don't even know what it is.
Right. But is it possible that we will be able to find out what it is?
Well, we haven't managed thus far, have we?
No. Indeed. Maybe we didn't have the right technology, eh?
I mean, technology is, I think there are all sorts of things that are involved with being human, which cannot be and will never be, will never fall under the auspices of AI or computerized machines or robots. Robotizing and computerizing life, I accept that it's here, and I accept that it's a thing, and it's probably going to become more of a thing. But to me, it is making humans less. It makes humans less. See, I'm old enough to remember when email came in. Okay, not a lot of people talk about this or recall this now, or we've forgotten it. But I remember when email came in, and I remember the transition in the office from not having email to having email. I worked in a organization where we did that transition. I was there when email was not a thing, and I left when we were using it full time. What did it do? It did all sorts of wonderful things, but it did something very terrible. It made people more distrusting, because what happened in the office was that it was no longer, hey David, what time's that meeting? Oh, it's at 2 o'clock, Richard. Yeah, great, see you there. It was, dear David, what time is that meeting, please? CC my boss, CC my co-worker, CC somebody else. Response, it's at 2 o'clock, and you CC everybody else as well. And nobody trusted anybody anymore. Now, that's a bit of a generalization, but I saw how it went in the industry that I was in at the time. And it made people more distrustful. It made people less acute and using their brain. They used their brain less because it was all reliant upon the technology. That's not a step forward. I accept that it's a step that we have taken. I accept that it has happened. I'm not trying to wind back to pre-email. That would be ridiculous. But there are as many negatives as there are positives with it. And this is the case for all technology. So this idea that we become better by technology, I'm not convinced. We become different. We become different. We absolutely become different. But I'm not convinced that we can become better at all.
Do you think there's some truth in saying that we're in a race with technology, and technology has been picking up the pace exponentially, and we have stayed and perhaps gone backwards, but we need to be raising ourselves up to match the tools that we have available to us now, so that they don't control us?
So I'm always suspicious of the we word, as you know, but okay. I think we are in a race against other humans who deny the spiritual dimensions of life. That's what I actually think is happening, because the AI technology agenda is a profoundly, at its core, at its heart, it is an anti-spiritual agenda. And it is run and promoted and pushed by anti-spiritual people, not people who don't believe in God, people who want to destroy the notion of God or want to make themselves God. Now, I appreciate there are plenty of people in Silicon Valley who go to meditation sessions and this, that, and the other. And Steve Jobs, the Apple guy, was very well known for reading Zen Buddhist literature and this kind of stuff. But that's not where the scene as a general rule is at. That's not what is going on with those people. Those people are, it's not that they're in an anti-human agenda, it's that they're in an anti-spiritual agenda. And that is, so spirituality is trying to be they're trying to take it from us.
Mhm. Yeah,
that's the way I see it.
Because they see it as a danger, I'd imagine.
They do see it as a danger, and technology is one of the ways which they try to take it from us.
Mhm.
But it's by no means the only way that they try to take it from us.
Mhm.
Modern politics, which is very untech orientated,
Mhm.
modern politics is profoundly anti-spiritual.
Mhm.
It's profoundly against the idea that there is any kind of higher meaning or higher purpose to life.
Mhm.
So to me, the agenda is a bit wider. It's not just that we're in a race against machines. I mean, we are, but there's something else going on. It's part of a broader pattern, I think.
Okay, so I suppose that what I was getting to with that was that if we can develop ourselves as individuals to greater degrees to personal sovereignty, which we'll talk about the map for in a moment, I hope, is the way to temper this pace of technological development.
I'm not sure the pace can be tempered. I think that,
or rather, sorry, the control that perhaps then it would have as a result of it exponentially increasing in development.
Well, maybe, yeah, I mean, maybe, but I think that you have to have personal sovereignty, which means essentially an idea of who you are and what you're for. I mean, that's what the root of personal sovereignty is. You've got to have a clue of what it's for. I mean, if you're going to be sovereign, what are you doing it for?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the object of the exercise? There's got to be an object to the exercise. And it's not just to do whatever the hell you want. It's to live your purpose, to find your purpose, to live your purpose. So you've got to have that. Then maybe you can embrace technology. I mean, actually, you can then embrace technology, but then you have a better chance of using it.
Yeah.
So there are people who use the internet, but there are people who are used by the internet.
Yeah.
And there is no doubt about it that there is a huge number of people that are used by the internet. They scroll mindlessly, endlessly. We've all had moments of doing it, sometimes some more than others. Why are you on Facebook? Oh, well, this is what I do after I have my dinner. Endlessly. And the internet is using the person. They're not using it. They think they're using it. They're not using it at all.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if you have personal sovereignty, i.e. a sense of what you are, who you are and what you're for, then you can maybe engage with technology in a more fruitful manner.
Mm. Okay. All right. Well, I think that takes us very nicely then into the map laid out in your book, Soul Strong.
Yes, thank you. So each individual is a unique mixture of the 4 elements, by which I mean earth, air, fire, water, the principles of the 4 elements. And so that forms who they are. And then the road forward for them is represented by 4 numbers. Now, we haven't got time to go into the calculations and the how you find what your personal map is. But the point is that there is one.
Mm.
And I'm actually not the only person that says this. Other people believe this too. They just have other systems. Other systems are available. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that it is rooted in whatever system you're going to apply, whatever map you're going to use. It is rooted in the fact that your starting point on the map is unlike anybody else's. Your journey through the territory of the map is unlike anybody else's, and the destination that you're trying to reach is unlike anybody else's. Mm-hmm. As soon as you say, we are the same, we're doing the same thing, we're going to the same place, you're lost. Mm-hmm. You're lost. You walk together with people for a certain period of time, and then you leave them and you walk separately, and you walk with somebody else for a period of time. And that's the essence of the map. That's the essence of how you will go forward to find your thing, to do your thing, because everybody's got a thing that they can do. Mm-hmm. Might be big, might be small, doesn't matter what it is, but it's theirs. It belongs only to them. Mm-hmm.
Never has been done before, never will be done again.
Never has been done before, never will be done again. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. That's crucial. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done.
And
it's
everyone
not like,
loses
well,
out.
if I don't do it, somebody else will do it. No, they won't. They might do something similar. It might be quite similar, but it will never be the same. So it roots in an understanding of the four elements, how earth, air, fire, water operate in our lives, and how we can work with them. That gets a bit mystical, a bit esoteric. And then it links in with numerology. You could bring tarot, you could bring astrology into these esoteric disciplines. You can use these things as signposts, markers on this journey that you're having through your life. Rather than using them as predictive things, they're signposts to show you which way to go.
Yeah, okay. And we can get mystical about it, but I mean, you don't need to see the value in it through that lens either, right? It's you could just see them as contemplative tools. Like you say, the signposts, they allow you to look at everything that's going around through a certain lens. And then what you already have known somehow will stand out to you more rapidly because you've focused yourself a bit more. Is that fair to say?
So, yes. So by using things like tarot, numerology, astrology, even in a contemplative kind of way, in a non-predictive kind of way, in a meditative kind of way, then what you're allowing to happen is you're giving yourself a chance, only a chance, you're giving yourself a chance to go outside of your own thoughts. And this is crucial because so many times all that we are doing is looking around, like that kind of Spider-Man meme. We're looking around all the time and we're spotting something that seems to be significant, but actually it's just us messing with ourselves. Right. So how do we go beyond our own thoughts about ourselves? How does the goldfish swimming in the water realize that he's swimming in the water? Because if he just carries on swimming in the water, he will never know that that's what he's doing. And that's where we need something contemplative, something meditative, something like an inner guide exercise, something that takes us out, has the opportunity to take us out of our own thoughts. In a less spiritual kind of way, we would say introduce novelty. When people talk about introducing novelty into the situation, what they mean is introduce something that has got nothing to do with the situation at all, and it will break the pattern of thinking that people have, and you'll be able to then think new thoughts. That's the unspiritual kind of explanation, but there are deeper ways of looking at it.
So we'll go to those next, but so it allows you to step outside of the room of your mind, so to speak, and to look at the room and all the things in it and to see the shape of it, and then you can have more of an understanding of what it actually is, as opposed to just being totally absorbed by it being the fish in the water, not realizing that you're actually in water because that's your only frame of reference, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked last time then about the need to have a connection to God. So to get more spiritual, more mystical perhaps as well, let's bring that in. Where does the connection to God, how is that formed? Where does that fit in here?
So as far as I'm concerned, God is not you. God is not a higher version of you. God is not you looking down at you. God is not your true nature. God is not, the whole point of God is it's not you. It's not you. It's not me, and it's not you. It's something that is bigger and higher, and wider, and deeper, and not us. Okay, this is crucial because having a connection to God in that way, in that God is not us. God might show itself through us. God might appear in the people that we meet, but it's not us. It's bigger than us. So having a connection to God in that way is the only way that I'm aware of. There could be other ways, but it's the only way I'm aware of that you can get out of yourself, get out of your own often petty and often trivial anxieties and concerns. I'm a big fan of the individual. as I've said before, and as I've made clear in these talks, big fan of the individual, but I'm not a fan at all of the individual believing that everything in the world is about them, because it isn't.
Like
it absolutely
show.
Well, indeed, it absolutely is not. It absolutely is not. There are forces at play. Ultimately, a single force at play, but there are forces at play which have got nothing to do with what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what you're doing. There are forces at play which have got nothing to do with. They're not reflections of you. They're not projections of you. They exist whether you exist or not. They exist whether you are, and they operate whether you are aware of them or not. And I'll put those in a bucket and I'll label it God.
Okay. It'd be easy for some people watching them to go, well, isn't that just the same as saying we're a grain of sand, we're insignificant, we're just the same as everything else, when it doesn't matter what we do.
In relation to that God idea, we are small, but we are not identical. That's the point. We're not identical. Everybody has a piece of the puzzle, a piece of the jigsaw puzzle of life. We only have one piece. I have one piece, you have one piece, somebody watching has one piece. Nobody has more than one piece. Lots of people think that they have more than one piece. Lots of people try to accumulate more than one piece, but they don't have it. Everybody has one piece of the puzzle of life, and it's up to each individual to put that in place. But the puzzle, the piece of the puzzle is not the picture. And it's the picture that is God.
Okay, so God is not us, but are we part of God?
Yeah, everything's part of God.
Right. Okay.
But it doesn't run the other way around, that that we are just God. There is much more to it than that.
Okay, so we're not just a part of God. There's more to us. Okay, so go into that some more.
So we are a part of God. We are an expression. We are individual expressions of God. But in order to see the bigger picture of what God might be, we have to find out who we are, find out what we're for, discover our meaning, establish our personal sovereignty, and do our work in the world in the unique way that only we can. Then the totality, the picture, is formed.
Okay.
From all the unique different pieces.
Okay.
You see, the difficulty that is sometimes had here, understandably, is that it is becoming increasingly hard to see people's uniqueness. That's a real problem, and that's something that has changed in my course of time on the planet in this incarnation. It used to be very obvious. It used to be much more obvious to me, anyway, how people were different and unique. And it's much less obvious now how they're different and unique. You have to dig a lot more now. But they are different and unique. When an event happens, right, when something occurs in the world, there is no such thing as a collective response. There is no such thing as a collective response. There are a bucket load of individual responses which may share some common theme, but this is not the same. And whenever it's promoted that there's a collective response, you're dealing with an anti-spiritual agenda, an anti-God agenda. For example, if we go back, showing my age once more, when Princess Diana died. Terrible event that Princess Diana would die. Terrible event that somebody like that, who was still young and was loved by people her own age and had children who she loved and loved her. Terrible event. Should not have happened. But the idea that there was a mass outpouring of grief shared by the entire population of the United Kingdom or the Commonwealth was garbage. Was absolute propaganda. That was absolute propaganda. It was very sad. I must admit, I remember it well. It shook me. I don't like this. This is a bit disturbing. But the idea that we all felt exactly the same, we all had the same view, this is just what it is. It is propaganda.
Yeah.
Designed to make us lose connection to our uniqueness and our individuality.
Okay. Yeah. And that is the trend within civilizations, full stop, would you say?
It's the trend within the West. It's been the trend within the West for a long time.
Okay.
For many decades, it's been the trend within the West. I wouldn't like to speak about the East. It's obvious in China. China thinks, the Chinese Communist Party think much more about, and they don't recognize the individual as far as I can see. I think they think that the individual is of any significance at all.
No.
I wouldn't like to generalize about other cultures in the world, but definitely in the West, we are in it's a fear-based response. You see, we're talking about sovereignty. If essentially you're going to take the crown, right, and you're going to put it on your own head, well, that's hardcore, because that means you're responsible. It's on you. Everything's on you then.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take that off. Thank you very much. I'll not bother with that. And that is why Caesar continues to rule. And in many ways, Caesar is stronger than ever, because many people, and I don't judge them for it, I understand it, but many people with the opportunity to put the crown on their head will not put the crown on their head. They'd rather the crown, inverted commas, the crown, they'd rather it be on somebody else's head, because then all of the good stuff and all of the bad stuff is not on them.
Yeah. But we're likely to see that be the case, because it has always been the case, from what I can tell, and it will continue to be the case. So what do we hope the benefit will be of some people choosing personal sovereignty?
The benefit is for the individual that chooses personal sovereignty. For
the individual and for the bigger picture of God.
If you have a critical mass of people who choose personal sovereignty and approach it in a sound manner, then you might get an overall effect filtering out into the rest of society and the rest of the world. There's a school of thought which says that critical mass doesn't need to be very many people, actually. But at first, the benefits will not seem so great. But when you follow the path of personal sovereignty for long enough, well, you wouldn't do any other.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that works for themselves or is self-employed, I mean, that's an aspect of personal sovereignty. It's not full personal sovereignty, because you're answerable to your clients. Okay, so, but it's an aspect. It's a demonstration. It's a step towards personal sovereignty to be self-employed. And anybody who's been self-employed for any length of time gets to the point where they cannot go and work for somebody else. They become unemployable, and they know this about themselves. And then it's like, okay, this is real now. I have to make this business work, because I can't just go and get a job, because I can't go and get a job. It's impossible for me to do this now. This is just not who I am any longer.
Yeah.
Personal sovereignty is like, that to the power of 10. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Fair enough. I feel like we've only really touched the surface here, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff to get into around spirituality. And I just for any of those who haven't looked into spirituality at all, then just to decouple that from religion, which I would say is more the dogma, the rules to supposedly connect with a deity, whereas actually it's more about the collective, the we, the group that they're associating with, right?
So the easiest explanation to this in the Christian sense is that there's Christianity and then there's Churchianity. And anybody that hears those two words will know that they don't need an explanation. They know that there's two different things.
Yeah.
And that Churchianity is what a lot of people follow.
Yeah, indeed.
Less than they used to be, but that's the institutionalized Roman Catholic,
yeah,
and Church of England.
So it's in a relationship to God is essential personal sovereignty, but Churchianity and other religious versions of that, other religions versions of that are not the root to personal sovereignty, they're the opposite. Anti-life, anti-spiritual.
I would say that religion in its established sense,
yep,
most of it is pretty anti-spiritual.
Mm-hmm. You say there's any value to any of the ceremonies, the traditions, any of that can help?
Well, there is, and it does depend on the individual path. So, for example, you can definitely attune to a spiritual connection if you go to a old religious site. If you go to a cathedral or even a mosque or temple, there's something there. There's something there. You can get it, and you don't have to go with the dogma in order to get that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people still go to church. They don't really believe in the dogma, but they go because they find that it gives them some kind of sense of upliftment, gratitude, peace, less angriness when they leave. Right. And they don't study the scripture. They don't follow the practices necessarily, but it gives them some kind of something. I'm not going to knock that. Mm-hmm. Some of the practices absolutely are. They connect you, because anything that you do ritualistically with an intention will connect you to a goal.
Yeah.
But
more of a passive approach is what I'm hearing from you, though. That's more of a passive approach. You go in and you receive the calm vibes of the environment that you're in, perhaps the calming hand on the shoulder by the vicar or whatever. It's more of a receptive thing, whereas tell me if I'm right or wrong about that, but the personal sovereignty piece is really more of an active forging in the world and in the inner world also. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So church, even Churchianity, I think could fulfill a useful role in a society, because it gives people, even if people do nothing more than go for an hour on a Sunday, it gives them an hour on a Sunday where they are a bit more contemplative, where they are a bit more less about themselves, where they're a bit more trying to connect into something bigger. And then that leaves them the other 6 days and 23 hours to forge ahead, defining their own purpose and their own mission. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say you need a bit more than that, but that would not be a bad situation.
Yeah, there's worse situations.
There are worse situations, and a worse situation is to not have the hour a week on a Sunday and to not have the church or anything like that at all. That would be a much worse situation, because then you will spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, thinking only about yourself and relating everything to yourself. And that is not what positive individuality is about.
Okay, right. Yeah, good. And one other thing, I realize we need to close in a moment, but one of the thing you touched on there, this incarnation you mentioned. So to help people to step out of their fishbowl, to get some perspective, I think it's very handy, I think, to recognize this idea of the many lives that we live. So often associated with the Eastern philosophy, the idea of reincarnation, but going back to the Pythagoreans, was it 5th, 6th century BCE? They talked about the transmigration of souls. Now, I find that a very helpful, even if it's just a contemplative tool to help us to view the fact that we are more of a soul coming back and back and back and continuing to learn and grow over many, many lifetimes. So could you say a bit more on that?
Well, even in early Christianity, before it became Churchianity, in like the 200s and the 300s AD, before the Roman Empire got hold of it, transmigration of souls, i.e., that we reincarnate, that was accepted early Christian teaching. It just got kicked out of it as Rome got more and more involved. My attitude to this is that it serves as a check and a balance. For example, if you were a Nazi who persecuted others in a previous life, you can guarantee you will get persecuted in this life. If you were a military officer who went and bombed a load of civilians in the Middle East in this life, you can guarantee that you'll get bombed in the next life. Right. You know, there's a million examples you could give of that, where everything what goes around comes around.
Karma? Yeah,
if you like, but rebalancing. Rebalancing is all that I see it as. If you were a ruler, then you must also learn about what it means to be ruled. If you were assertive and dominant, then you must learn in another life what it's like to be passive and compliant, and switch that back, and vice versa. And therefore, everything that happens in this life is rooted in whatever you did before, or in many cases, what you didn't do before and what you didn't do before.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a pendulum swing in each lifetime. There's a big pendulum swing. Are we trying to slow the swings down, make it less extreme?
Well, if I would say, rather than a two-dimensional pendulum swing, I'd say a pendulum that kind of needs to move in all directions at certain points. Okay. You know, to have a full life, which a full life means a full series of lives, which means across the incarnations, you've got to be king, peasant, general, soldier, artist, model for artist, writer, illiterate, male, female, rich, poor, tall, short, dark, fair, white, black, all of it. To have the full experience of life, you've got to have dipped in and experienced all of those things. Now, if you then look at life through that lens and consider it for a few minutes, everything takes on a whole different, it's a different ball game then. You're not going to be so quick then to take down statues and cancel people who said things 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, or even 10 years ago, because what goes around comes around. And because times were different then, what we know now, we didn't know then.
What would you say to the people who are toppling statues, though, who believe it to be a good thing?
Well, they can believe whatever they like. I mean, but the people who put them up believed it to be a good thing. I mean, you know, the people that I'm not supporting anything on either side of the point here. Yeah. The point is that the people who put them up thought that they were doing a good thing. The people who put them up weren't sitting there going, "This is an evil thing, and we're going to do evil." Yeah, but people think that.
People always think they're doing good. Yeah.
So climate change, for example, we must eradicate climate change. We must stop this, and we must hold Britain, uniquely Britain, to account, says St. Greta, because this was the home of the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution was absolutely an evil thing. Now, this is insanity. This is absolute insanity, because the people who were forefront of pushing forward the Industrial Revolution, as far as they were concerned, they were trying to break the stranglehold of the agricultural feudal economy. It was a movement forward. It was a movement of progress and of optimism and of light and of growth. And they weren't sitting there going, we've got this steam engine now, let's screw the entire planet up and make loads of money for ourselves. That wasn't what they were doing. And anybody that thinks that that's what they were doing desperately needs to go and read some history, because that's not what was happening at all. So this kind of revising the past through our current understanding is another anti-spiritual thing, because it's not recognizing the fact that back then they didn't know what we know now. Yeah.
And we're always going to make mistakes.
We're always going to make mistakes as part of it. They weren't sitting there going, if we burn all this coal, we know it's going to screw the climate up, but hey, we don't care because we're imperialists and we want to win. They weren't doing that. That is insane to think that they were doing that.
So to bring it forward again to St. Greta and her minions, perhaps, who are calling for us to be held accountable as a country, what could be the mistakes in that we will look back on?
Well, there's one easy identifiable mistake, which is a complete lack of self-awareness. A complete lack of self-awareness, because it is extremely judgmental on a whole load of people who can't answer back because they're dead. to hold the sins of the world. It all comes from them. It all comes from that time, because you can guarantee. So her and her minions, bless her, it's another anti-spiritual agenda.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing beyond the material world.
Yeah.
In that worldview, there's nothing beyond the trees and the roads and the bridges and the cars and the human body. There's nothing beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that viewpoint promotes. There's nothing beyond the material, and we must do everything, including destroying the human spirit, to preserve the life of the material. That's what that worldview says.
Yeah. That is the same worldview that leads to us becoming cybernetic life forms, because we need to ensure the longevity of the material, right?
If you are saying, not you, them, if they're saying that we must do anything and everything to mitigate, prevent, roll back climate change, well, I mean, that is what will happen. They will do anything, and I mean anything, to roll back climate change. And then you might have a situation where climate change is indeed rolled back. But the fate of humanity under that will be terrible.
Mm. Okay.
Individual sovereignty, individual purpose, realizing that there is something that you can do that nobody else can do. And it's a matter of uncovering what that is and following your own path towards that, which might sometimes mean agreeing with other people, sometimes will be not agreeing with them, but walking your own path can only be done individually.
Mm-hmm.
If enough people could do it, maybe there would be a broader shift, but we've got to get enough people to do it first of all.
Yes. Okay. All right. So that's what we're hoping to inspire in this video series. And the key message, and just to remind viewers, is that it might be the end of the world, but it isn't the end of the world for us personally, necessarily. And this conversation is a good way to demonstrate how we might avoid catastrophe.
Absolutely.
Individually and not as a collective, but nations, communities may survive and do well.
To me, it has to begin with the individual. It has to begin with the recognition that people have choice, including the choice to get things wrong.
Mm.
But they must be, that choice must be preserved, because without that, there can be no growth. There can be no individual growth. If we're not free to get it right or get it wrong, then the growth ends. Growth stops. Human growth stops.
Yeah. So protecting individual human rights, even though that is all perhaps tied up with some nonsense, but freedom of choice, freedom of expression, all of that. Which
includes the freedom to get it wrong and the freedom to say things that are nonsense.
Yeah.
That's crucial. The freedom to say what other people don't want to hear. Crucial.
Yeah. And then to realize that's a mistake and learn from the lesson, hopefully, and then change the way you live.
Absolutely. And if you don't do it in this lifetime, then you do it in the next lifetime. And that's called evolution. That's called growth.
It'll happen eventually. So get the mistakes out early, perhaps.
Yes, seems reasonable. Yes.
Right then. Okay. So good chat as always. Thank you again, Richard, for your time. And perhaps next time we'll talk a bit more about community.
Look forward to it. Thank you, David.
Cheers.